What's up, you guys? All right, so I think a lot of you are going to resonate with this one. I feel like this is the majority of my community. I know it's not everybody, but I think that a lot of you have a tendency to be alone, and that's your comfort zone. So if so, this one's for you. I just have my notes here. All right, so I want to start this out by saying, really think about it. You're attracted to sacred union. You're on a channel that's all about conscious partnership and sacred union. Obviously, there is a part of this journey that's really important to do on your own for yourself. Like, let's call it like inner union. You start to balance and harmonize all the parts of yourself. But guess what? That's not meant to go on indefinitely. I'm here to help people be in real relationship. I probably, first of all, anything that I'm talking about when it comes to these videos from the beginning, when I started till now, is coming from embodied experience, not just by myself, in relationship with somebody else. Like, I'm not pulling it out of thin air. And I've experienced a lot of changes over the last couple of years, but you know, my private life is really sacred, so I'm not sharing details. I think it's important to respect your privacy, you know? But again, I'm not just making this stuff up, and I know, like, off the top of my head, because I've worked with several of these people, I know like 10 to 15 couples that are in union, and they have really beautiful, healthy relationships. Some of them work together as partners, like in their business. Some of them, like one person, like myself, like I'm front facing, maybe the other person is like, has nothing to do with spiritual work or whatever. They're like not online. They do their own thing, or they're private. They're not, you don't see their partner. But the point is, and a lot of these people have been together for years, in some cases like 10 to 15 years. So just know, this is not a fantasy, this is real, you guys. I am not here to indefinitely do tarot readings or videos about union for people to be alone. But being alone is important, it's beautiful, and if you use that time that you're alone intentionally, then you'll transform there, but you'll also transform out of your single period at some point. Most likely. Like, it's very unlikely to me that people that are this drawn to union, that have this deep, deep desire to be in union, that you're meant to be alone forever. I highly doubt it. But if you don't change anything in your life and you don't start to take steps out of your comfort zone of being alone back towards connection and then intimate connection, then nothing's probably going to change. Let's be real. That's being realistic, you know? Part of the reason why I came back to YouTube is to help you guys come back to this path and actually commit to going forward. I don't want to see people out there with a deep yearning for intimacy be by themselves forever. It kind of breaks my heart for you. I certainly didn't want that for myself, and I knew that if I wanted to be in a relationship, this type of relationship, I knew I was going to have to do some work. I've done a lot of work, you guys. Like I said, I've experienced a lot of beautiful breakthroughs and transformations and positive progress and all kinds of things. So just know that this is legit and come back. All right. So, and of course, again, after you move out of your single period and you move back into partnership, like this type of relationship is just another form of spiritual practice. It's just like the next level, you know? It's not like it's better or worse. It's different. And you're going to need skills to maintain this type of connection, because again, it can be very intense. The emotional alchemy of it, and even the sexual piece of it, it's fun, it's beautiful, but also it can bring up a lot of stuff for healing. And a big part of my work is around sacred sensuality, sacred sexuality, right? That's why the Magdalene manuscript is such a guide for me. And why it's so resonant is because that's really what that book delves into. Mary Magdalene's Tantric connection, both emotionally, sexually, energetically, spiritually, and also the emotional alchemy between them. It wasn't just, it's not a religious book. It's, you know, Tom Kenyon's like a Buddhist and studied those types of lineages. He's not Catholic. So, and also it's tied in with ancient Egypt. So again, that's what's most resonant for me, and that's been my path. Like, so much of my journey with this material has been around healing my sexual energy, both alone and in partnership. So yeah, so let's get into this. This one won't be very long, this video. If you tend to be a lone wolf, again, it's safe there. There's no risk. Like, there's no one to hurt you. So it could go on indefinitely. And you might find ways to get some of your needs met. So you might like use friendships, friends of the opposite sex, for example, to meet some of your emotional needs. Or you might use something else like work and be a workaholic and fill the void that way. You might use like fantasy as a way to meet some of your needs. You know, a lot of people use tarot readings and continue to as a form of escapism. But like I said, sitting around hoping and praying, watching tarot readings and thinking about this magical relationship that's gonna like, maybe it's gonna fall out of the sky onto your lap and land on your doorstep and then you're gonna like live happily ever after. You guys, that's not how it works. But it's not a fantasy. This is real for a lot of us, but you know, you're gonna have to make some changes and get out of that comfort zone and lean into intimacy. And you can start that platonic, doing it with family, friends, or putting yourself in groups of strangers and start to do this type of work. Also, self-intimacy is really important when you're alone. So let's go there. Again, one more note on sort of the escapism. A lot of people use these things as a way to avoid grief. Like if you were to actually sit and feel maybe the loneliness and actually acknowledge it, it's not to stay there forever. It's to acknowledge that it's there. A lot of people do other things to avoid their grief and avoid their feelings, especially if you're hyper independent or you're always alone. If you were to sit down and acknowledge the grief around the lack of connection in your life, that might feel really overwhelming. And so you find ways to avoid your feelings. That's very common. But lone wolf syndrome is like a self-defense mechanism. So is hyper-independence. Because being alone, doing everything alone, not needing anyone for anything is just a way to protect yourself from like potential pain. And it might even be like a trauma response if when you were young or when you were growing up, trying to get your needs met led to a lot of hurt, then the automatic response is to do it yourself, is to not ask other people, it's to not invite other people in. And you become accustomed to that. But that's a repellent for deep intimacy. And at some point, you've got to stretch yourself. You've got to, deep intimacy is extremely exposing. It's that paradox. It's so beautiful. People will be like, I want to be fully seen in a partnership. I want this person to fully see me. And I'm like, okay, are you sure? Like, I agree. And if you want to be fully seen, that means they're going to see all of your insecurities and your fears and everything you don't like about yourself, along with all of the beautiful parts. Do you want that? I mean, I do want that. That's why I do this work. But I'm saying when you get to that point where a person that you deeply love is fully seeing you, at first it's terrifying. It was for me. I was like, wow, this is really overwhelming. Because I had never felt that before. I felt seen in connection with someone that I wasn't that attracted to. I felt seen with people where I felt like I was in control. And another part of lone wolf syndrome or hyperindependence is usually it's a control mechanism because you feel like you're holding the control. You're in the power position. But deep intimacy means we've got to let a lot of that go. And it's not about being in control anymore. And again, that can be really terrifying. That for me, I think that was the scariest part. So solitude is important, but you want to use your time alone intentionally. I mean, we even have the Hermit card in the tarot because part of the spiritual journey is meant to be done alone. Some of these realizations are meant to be done alone, but being single does not mean that intimacy is null and void. So there are a lot of ways that you can start to develop self-intimacy. This is literally what I do. You guys, most of what I do with people is their own practice. And then they just take what they're learning with their own intimacy practices and their own spiritual practice, and then they're applying it to the relationship when they're finally in a relationship. And some of my clients are in partnership and some of my clients are single. So it's okay either way, but most people are just alone. They're not actually doing anything to stretch themselves, to be uncomfortable and get out of their comfort zone. And for example, this is why I created the Return of Venus. If you're a woman, that is a beautiful first step, especially if you have resistance to your sensuality and your sexual energy. Just because you're alone doesn't mean you're meant to ignore your sensuality or ignore your sexual energy. In Taoism, or in the Magdalene manuscript, there are practices for solo cultivation of your sexual energy to raise your consciousness. I've spent over, like I've spent, I think I got the Magdalene manuscript in 2014, so it has been 10 years that I've had that book, and I've been doing those meditations from the book, The Alchemies of Horus, on and off for 10 years, in addition to lots of other things, because now I have a Buddhist practice and I'm learning lots of new things, but, or even like Kundalini practices, I wove those in too. But like, there's a lot that you can do on your own, because again, you need like a foundation to bring to a relationship. And I think that most people just don't realize this, or they're like, they don't want to look at this part because it means that you have to actually take steps. You've got to take steps towards what you want so it can meet you. And so again, I created Return to Venus. It's a 5-week self-led program. It's self-paced on purpose because you have to start to practice these things for yourself. But that is a beautiful way to, if you're a lone wolf, especially like I was, alpha female, always doing everything for yourself, then you're probably in like more of your masculine or your yang energy, action oriented, always doing. And so much of deep intimacy is about learning how to receive, to be open, to surrender, to soften, to open, to let go of the control. It takes practice, but that's why I designed that. So if this video is like resonating and you're like serious about union, like start being serious about taking some next steps. That program's only $200-ish, 222. And you can also practice like conscious relating with the people that are in your world right now. That's why they're there. I lived with my family, for example, for like almost 6 years to build my business. I was with my parents. As a grown woman in my 30s, it was very challenging. However, I knew that because those are the relationships in front of me, especially when they're your parental relationships, like, and also I come from a line of women that were hyper independent. So I knew that I needed to integrate my feminine energy. So during that time, I was using my parents as my practice, right? And especially with my mom. And also I placed myself in women's spaces. So I joined in like the middle of the pandemic, a women's group all about the Magdalene energy for a year. And that was like one of my first steps to put myself in a place where I was going to be in an intimate position and be vulnerable and have to be with a group of strangers and do this type of work. It was a stretch for me. And yet it was an amazing leap. Because after I was in that program, like shortly after I finished that, no, in the year when I was still in that program, I moved out finally. And then things started to really blossom. And I really took I made like a quantum leap in that year. Because I knew deep down, like I needed to heal a lot of my feminine energy. This is why I was repelling partnership. Because I was still like so heavily stuck in my kind of like distorted masculine, in my distorted feminine energy. And so whatever difficult relationship is in your life right now, start there. Start using the conscious relationship tools with those people. And also start developing your own self-intimacy practices. And if you have a real resistance to your sexual energy or to sex, sensuality, like you didn't find me by accident, that's really my focal point. Like that is what I do. That's what also makes me different than some of these mentors out there that talk about this stuff. Because sexual healing has been the primary purpose of my, not the only, but a huge part of my sacred relationship journey with myself and in relationship with somebody else. So remember, like, where attention goes, energy flows, and where your intention is, same thing. If you want intimacy, if you want union, you want conscious partnership, how are you taking steps to meet that thing? You need to become more of an embodiment of the thing that you want to attract. And like I said, you also need skills, because when the relationship comes, guess what? You don't just know how to do this stuff. You need to learn how to be in this type of relationship. I didn't know how to do any of this. I'm still learning as I go. But most definitely, if a relationship dropped out of nowhere onto your lap, if you don't have the skills to navigate it and sustain deep connection, which is also very uncomfortable, like I said, it's very vulnerable, then what do? We sabotage it. We push it away. We fuck it up. Not because we want to, because we're afraid. So that's why taking some steps, again, are precursors to partnership. And again, I don't want you guys to just sit around and hope and wish and think about this for the rest of your lives. And so think about what next steps you can start to take. Because being a lone wolf, like I said, it might feel comfortable, it might feel non-threatening, you feel in control there, but union is about choosing love over your control mechanisms, because you have to surrender so much of that to experience unconditional love. You'll feel like you're out of control. You're like, holy fuck, I'm free falling. That's right. You're free falling, but into like an amazing portal of expansion. They're not like, nothing beats being fully seen, like I said, in partnership with someone that you really love. But to get there, like, you have to face a lot of your fears, and you'll have to continue to face those fears. So start developing some skills so that when it comes, you'll be able to, you know, navigate it with more grace. And you guys, I've been doing this for a long time, and it's still bumpy at times, you know, because it will bring up again your shadow along with all of the good stuff. So like I said, if you're a lone wolf, I see you, I feel you. Start somewhere. Okay? Start with a free practice. You know, if you go to the Return of Venus page, I've got a free sensual embodiment series with 2 meditations in there, 2 embodiment practices. Start there. But what you have to stop doing is making excuses and start taking small steps, because one step is going to lead to the next step. You know, I did invest a lot of time and energy in my resources, also because, not just because it was such a deep desire, but because I do this work and I want to be here in integrity for you guys, right? So you will have to invest time and energy and resources. But guess what? The more that you take steps towards what your heart desires, especially when it's your soul's path, your devotion is going to attract resources and support. So the more that you place your intention here, the more that you're going to start receiving help to keep going. I've received some really magical support along the way to keep doing this work. That's how I know that I am meant to be doing this, you know? So yeah, this is my specialty. I will also be opening up another women's space. I plan on doing the Magdalene Mysteries as a year long, just like I did Rose Temple, but this will be a little bit more intermediate. If that's something that interests you, but you've never worked with me and you've never done any of this before, start now, you guys. Get into Return to Venus. Do that program. Because if you can't keep up with 5 weeks of a practice, then you won't be able to keep up with a year, right? So that's why I created that as a preliminary step to one of these longer programs. What I've been very careful about now is to screen people and make sure you're really ready, because we want people around the same, like, level and energy and emotional capacity, and then it makes the group really cohesive and it makes it a better experience for everyone. So there are steps that you can take, right? I've even got an audio bundle. If you're on the threshold and you're single but you really want to be in union but you're not sure what to do next, part of it is about devoting come back. It's like you have to devote yourself to this path, to this work, and say, yes, I'm all in. When you start going all in, you're going to be amazed at how things start to come towards you. And like I said, resources drop in, new opportunities, doors open, love comes in, like all kinds of things can transform. But you have to be like, yes, I'm in, I'm coming back. Not just passively sit back and watch and be an observer, but not actually participate. Okay, so that's what I'm here for you guys for. As I said, check out the links below. The Vow and Fully Claimed audio bundle are great if you're on the threshold, you're still single, and you want to start moving towards union. Or if you're a woman, Return to Venus is a great step, 5 weeks. Or you can book a one-to-one if you want to clarify things with me, if you want to get into some specifics in your journey. You can book a 90-minute session. I will, like I said, be opening the waitlist and applications for Magdalene Mysteries soon. But if you've never done anything, start getting ready. But if you've already worked with me, you might want to come into that. That one might be a good next step. And that's it for this one, you guys. If you're a man and you're doing this work and you want my support, you can book a 90-minute session. The Vow and Fully Claimed bundle are for all genders. You can always book a 90-minute session, and I love doing one-to-one mentorship with men. If you're a new client, it would have to be a long-term, you know, it's a 12-month container, so we can really go there. But if we've worked together before, I would offer you potentially 6 months. So I'm working with men and women around this, just so you guys know. It's just that the embodiment stuff is designed for women. And with men, I do a lot of the work, like the practices in Magdalene manuscript, but I'm able to do it with you and tailor it more to your personal experience. And men also tend to like to work alone. But being with a woman as a mentor is a great way to take that step towards intimacy and be seen in relationship with a woman in a professional way. But do you know what I'm saying? It's a great step for men. So that's why I enjoy working with men. And that's it for this one, you guys. I will see you soon. If you have comments, questions, leave them below. Even if you have questions about other topics and you want me to do a video on it, just drop it in the comments, you guys. I read all my comments, and I'll be happy to continue to answer questions in the form of videos, especially for this series about coming into union. And that is it. Otherwise, I will see you guys on the next one.